Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to the deMysticism podcast, sacred conversations around radical self-love. I am recording not on video today, going back to sitting actually in my closet because this is going to be a little bit of a raw conversation and I did not want to do it on video. And it's my podcast, so I'm going to do what I want to do here. I do want to offer a little bit of an opening intention as we enter into this conversation. I'm always experimenting with how I want this podcast to flow, but again, I'm taking freedom to do it my way. So, with that, let's take a deep breath in. Big exhale out. Start to allow your shoulders to soften down away from your ears. This is one of the simplest signals you can send to your body that you are safe, that you have the freedom to relax. Soften your belly a little bit, make some space for breath to flow. As you exhale out, see if you can soften your mind, being open to receive new ideas, open to self-reflection, open to learning. Every opportunity that you have, every experience that you have in life, every other human being that you come into contact with, these things are all here to work for you, for your highest evolution, to show you what you need to know. Give yourself another deep breath in. Big exhale out. Here we are. We are safe. We are supported. We are free. We are free to choose our experiences. So one more deep, full inhale wherever you are. And a big sigh, exhale. Okay. Offered that as much for me as I did for any of you listening. And today I am going to talk about self-abandonment and the mindfuck that is offered when you feel yourself self-abandoning. So again, this is personal. I started this freaking podcast in a moment of wanting to share my experience so that hopefully it can help other people who may tune in and listen. I do think this is one of my karmas, my dharma in life is to go through lessons that I can share with others. I think that's kind of all why we're all here, But as I record this, I like to record on Mondays. I just got this beautiful reminder of what Monday symbolizes. And it's meant to be Moon Day, right? It's a day of a new beginning. We start a new week on our typical calendar as we think of it in this world. And so I don't know why I decided to record these on Mondays, but in hindsight, maybe that's why. That's beautiful. So I'm going to speak a little bit about recent eclipse energy. As I'm recording, it is officially the Fall Equinox. We just had a new moon yesterday with a solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse. And if you are at all into astrology, you're aware. It's rocked my world this past, maybe it's been a month, a few weeks. And I've shared a little bit around loss of relationship, which seems to be one of the larger themes going on with this eclipse, this idea, this eclipse energy that we're just on the other side of, but this idea of cleaning and clearing and things sometimes getting cleared for us that maybe we didn't choose initially to have cleared, but trusting in the idea that the universe is always working us toward our higher self, our greatest good. And I do know that for me personally, I'm a Libra sun. I have a ton of Libra in my chart as I've been diving into dipping my toe into teachings of the Kabbalah, and my spiritual practices are just ever evolving. I take bits and pieces from all these different lineages, and I'm basically crafting my own hodgepodge of how I am learning to operate in the world. But it does seem as though the truth is my biggest healing is meant to come through relationship. And that is often going to come in my romantic relationships, also my familial relationships. So all of my closest relationships are my deepest opportunities for learning. I'm sure that resonates for a lot of you out there, because this is how we learn to be human, is by reflecting through other humans, and those other humans get put on our path to show us things, to show us where we could expand a little bit more, or where we are repeating patterns, repeating soul corrections, as they're called in the Kabbalistic lineage. And I'm feeling that there's some obvious ones that I'm being called toward very deeply right now. So I want to talk a little bit about the idea of self-abandonment, and I'm going to share a personal anecdote, I guess I'll call it, from this past weekend. And I think it's important to share the context so that I can give you some real-time examples of, even when you are deep in this work, you're going to find ways to do more work. You're going to put yourself in situations where you get a little lost, and a test gets put in front of you. And I never want to call it failing a test, but you get another opportunity to learn. So, real example. I, on Friday night, went with a girlfriend, to a workshop that we had signed up for earlier in the week. At the time, I was like, yeah, sure, feels fun. I'm intrigued. It was described as a Tantra workshop. This is something that I have been interested in, was exploring in my most recent relationship. And that was fun. That was fun to do with someone. And I am going to get emotional. I don't want to let myself drop things that I am interested in simply because I no longer have a partner exploring that with me. So I said yes. And I went to an event that at first I was like, ooh, okay, this might be a little uncomfortable, but something I teach in yoga all the time is pushing those edges of discomfort, because these are our greatest opportunities to expand. And what I want to talk about today is that it's not even a fine line. It can be maybe gray area between getting out of your comfort zone and self-abandonment. And as I walked into this workshop, it was held in the practitioner's home. She's someone I knew of in my circle, not someone I had met. And I was curious. So we walk in together. I was there with a girlfriend that I trust and am close to. And I immediately felt, as I entered this space, like almost instant anxiety. So we walk in, and there's a mix of men and women in the group. It becomes obvious right away that there's a couple of people that are there with a partner, and there's also a lot of people that are single. And I had previously met one other person in the room, a female. Everyone else was new to me. And there were a lot of single men in there. And I immediately picked up on this energy of, I want to say it feels like taking. This is what it feels like to me in this present moment. And granted, I am in the midst of healing of obviously what is showing up to me to be a deeper wound than I even realized. But I walk in and I feel all the men turn their attention toward us, and it feels like this assessing and wanting, curiosity. And I could frame it positively, but in that moment, it did not feel like that. It felt it felt uncomfortable. It felt like this lurky kind of, I don't know, but I didn't honor it right away. I thought, oh, okay. I felt all these men turn and look in our direction. I felt their eyeballs on me. And I just turned and walked into another room and proceeded to tell myself I wanted to come to this event and maybe there's something here for me to learn, which certainly there was something for me to learn. This is what I'm going to share with you. But as this proceeded, it was initially more of like a talk, and we were discussing the polarities of energy and how to work with some of these energies. And let me just clarify that there was no assumption of anything truly, well, I mean, it's sexual energy exchange, I suppose, intimate energy exchange, but the idea, the premise, at least as I understood it, was really working more in these poles of what some might call masculine and feminine energy, dominant and submissive energy, and just learning how to play with your energy. That piece I was comfortable with. I'm very much working on this stuff, and it's something that I'm actively curious about and wanting to cultivate. So as this workshop went on, there was a demonstration, and the leader of the workshop showed us this ritual, as it was called, that we were then going to practice. And all the while I'm sitting there thinking, I said to my female friend that I was there with, can we just partner up to do this together? Because I did not want to participate in this with any of the men in the space. And I was starting to recognize I have a lot of fear around men right now. I have literally zero trust in men. None. Like I felt all of this creeping up in me in that moment of, I want none of these men to touch me. I want none of these men to talk to me. I don't want to interact with a single one of them. And I have been feeling that in my bones recently, to the point where I barely even want to talk to my male friends. And I don't even have that many that I would call like friends that I can trust at this moment. So I don't want to get into this space of all men suck, I'm cutting them all out. It's not where I want to be. I don't believe that in my core. I know there are healthy, beautiful men out there, but in my current experience, what I am feeling in my being, and I can recognize it's coming from wounding, but there is real fear, real lack of trust. And it felt like anxiety in my body as we started to work toward, now we're going to have to put what she's teaching into practice. And I'm not going to call out the teacher. I know she has lovely intentions. This was my experience, and what I'm taking from it is a reflection on where I personally self-abandoned. So I don't want this to come across as blame. But when it came time to choose partners and start the ritual practice, my friend and I looked at each other and said, let's just do this together. And other people looked around the room. Some, again, were with their actual life partner. Some had probably already had a discussion with someone, because a lot of them, this wasn't a brand new practice for them. It seemed that everybody paired off except for two of the men, because there was an assumption by the leader that she was going to pair off men and women. And when my friend and I decided we'd just like to do this practice together, just this energy exchange practice with someone that I already know I feel safe with, it was, oh, well, it's very uncomfortable for the men to have to practice this man on man. So it would be a lot better if we could pair off the women and the men. And we sat there a little bit silently for a moment. And then all of a sudden, part of me just went, okay, fine, pair us with the men then. And that was the moment. In that moment, in hindsight, I have the shadow side of Libra. As I said, I have a ton of Libra in my chart. So there's a lot of work for me to do around relationship. And this shadow side is this peacekeeper, not wanting to upset people, people pleasing to my own detriment. And because something in me thought, oh no, I don't want the men to be uncomfortable, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable to appease this situation, to appease this leader of the workshop who clearly had an idea that the men and the women were going to pair off. So she assigned each of us to participate with one of the remaining males in the room. And we had to go through this exercise where one person is essentially in that Dom energy and one person is in the submissive energy, and then you switch. And it's just a practice. It's there's no real, true physical intimacy as far as, there's definitely physical intimacy. You are expected to touch this other human, just not in any of the areas we would deem, I guess, a little more personal. So here we are settling into this practice. And in that state that I was in, I had to essentially pretend to submit to a man I don't fucking know, who I definitely don't fucking trust. And I told him at the start, I don't really want to do this. I'm scared. Tears were literally rolling down my face, and yet I stayed in this fucking situation and went through this practice with this man, very tenderly. He was trying. I guess I give him credit, but I don't fucking know him. He's whispering in my ear, you're safe, you're worthy. All these statements that I'm like, I don't really fucking believe that right now. And yet I did not just get up and fucking leave. And then we had to switch, and I had to try to do the same for this guy that I don't know, frankly, don't care about. And it was just very difficult, very triggering. And I had to sit with it for all of the next day around all of this yucky feeling in my gut that I had let myself down, that I had made a vow coming out of this most recent experience of losing a relationship in a pretty painful way, that I was never going to self-abandon again. And then I did it like days later. And so this is what I want to talk about is, what do we do when we find ourselves repeating that lesson? And again, I think it was a test. I really do. And if I think about it, even from this Kabbalistic standpoint that I've been diving into, it absolutely was. And I don't see it necessarily as a failure. I see it as a beautiful opportunity where I got to witness myself. I basically didn't pass the test, I suppose, but I did because I know I'm not going to fucking do that again. And what I want to offer for you, if you're listening, and if you relate to this in any way, and it doesn't have to be this kind of situation, it could simply be in someone asking you to go and do an activity that you just don't really want to do, but yet you find that you say yes because you don't want your friend to be upset, or you say yes to a coworker because you don't want them to get upset with you, or you don't want them to be disappointed that you didn't want to jump in and help. You know what? It doesn't matter. We are not responsible for other people's disappointment. But in real time, what can you do to check in? That gut check of, okay, is this self-abandonment? And here's what I know, and here's what I did not honor the other night. And I am making a vow here that this is my practice, is to honor this going forward. But the first question to ask yourself is, where am I feeling this in my body? And for me, that's almost always in my belly, sometimes in my heart. But does it feel like constriction or does it feel like expansion? So when we're talking about pushing our comfort zones for growth opportunity, it will feel like expansion. When we're talking about that level of discomfort, it's going to feel like constriction. So the comfort zone, yes, it's not where we grow, but the comfort zone is also sometimes the safety zone. So if something is being presented to you that feels like constriction, it's your body saying, don't do that. That is not for you. I guess the next question would be, if I say yes to this, will I feel smaller, heavier, diminished? Because if you do, that's a sign that this is a no thank you. It's not what I want to do right now. Next question. If I do this, am I going to have a resentment hangover? Will I resent myself or the other person later? Because if you will, and if you're honest with yourself about that, that's a no. That's self-abandonment. Okay, more questions. Am I saying yes to this just so I can avoid disappointing someone? Or does this truly align with me? Is this for me or is this for them? And in that situation, I was 100% doing that to avoid disappointing other people in the room. That, again, that's my people pleaser shadow. So that's on me. I should have said, mm-mm. And I'm going to forgive myself for the fact that I didn't. But that one I knew. I knew in the moment, oh, I don't want them to be disappointed in me. And you know what? Who fucking cares if people are disappointed in you? Honestly, if you are honoring yourself, then maybe you'll actually get them to respect you. But back to this real-time gut checks. So another way to check in with yourself. For me, I have a teenage daughter. So if my daughter were presented with this situation, how would I want to see her handle it? You can put your friend, your mom, your sister, anyone else in that situation. How would you like to see them handling it? And then that's the answer. I would never want my daughter to say yes to something like that, to put herself in that situation. And yet I did it for myself. And if that one isn't really resonating, how about little you or teenage you? Would that version of you feel protected by that choice, or would that version feel hurt or abandoned? And when I think about it from that standpoint, I have an experience from my teen years that is really pretty messed up. I never thought of it as deep trauma, actually, until, the Me Too movement kind of awakened me there in that regard. And that still lives in my nervous system. And this situation, it put me back there. And that's like, I just conceded because I was scared. And that's fucking crazy. It's not crazy. I don't want to beat myself up more for those things, but it's not something I want to do again in the future. And then lastly, it's a similar question, but am I shrinking or smoothing or keeping myself quiet right now just to make it easier for others? So all of those, if those are what's happening, then you're self-abandoning. So those are good questions to keep in mind. And then, so now you're in one of these situations and, okay, I recognize right now that I'm self-abandoning. Now what the fuck do I do? Because it's still scary, right? So here's my recommendation is pause and take a deep breath. Again, I'm a goddamn yoga teacher. I teach this stuff all the time. And then sometimes in real time, I still falter. So that deep breath, take the pause, and then you get to choose a response, not a reaction. Reactions are reflex. Your responses show choice. Show that you have a clear head about what you are hoping, wanting, desiring, or even what you feel you're worthy of, which is honoring yourself. So now I'm going to put a go-to phrase in my back pocket, and that would be, you know what? I need a minute. I need to go check in with myself. Let me think about this and come back to you. And even if it means I've got to go step outside and maybe I'm going to come back and say, I'm bowing out of this experience and I'm sorry that you no longer have a partner. This is not for me. Or maybe I would have insisted, I would feel safer if I do this with a friend, with someone I know, because I'm happy to practice this energy play. I didn't want to do it with that person. I could have said that. Next, if we're thinking about what to do when we find ourselves in these situations, put your hand on your heart or your belly and just reconnect with you, with that higher sense of you. And then give yourself the reminder, it's okay if others are uncomfortable. Truly. And honestly, a reframe on this is that conflict, it doesn't need to be bad. Conflict can be clarity. Conflict as clarity, it's honesty. So it builds stronger trust than people pleasing. Because if you're looking to build deeper connections with other people, nobody truly, maybe if they're a narcissist, but truly good humans do not want you to concede your behavior to please them. They want you to honor you. And anyone who respects you is going to be in awe of your ability to hold yourself at that high of a standard. And if that's not their response, then they're not there for you anyway. So that's not even someone you really want to build a connection with, or it's something you want to evaluate your current connection with. So mantras you can work with. My needs matter too. And a true yes, it doesn't come from denial of self. That's not a yes. Remind yourself that I'm safe, even if they're upset. I would have felt more safe to let other people be upset in that situation than I felt to be having to practice this artificial sense of surrender, this artificial sense of intimacy with a perfect fucking stranger that I did not trust. So, a little bit of a longer episode today. Again, I'm working on how I want to put these together, what serves you all best. I know that there's a deeper practice I'm going to take out of this. So, maybe we'll continue this conversation. I think I'm going to make a specific meditation to help me work with this energy, because there's still work for me to do there. There's still work for me to do in finding closure with this most recent relationship. And I think I need to keep building my own muscles around that and keep strengthening my ability to hold me first, to keep me as me and my connection with spirit, God, universe, creator, whatever. I don't even have a specific name, but me with my connection to my higher power. Those are my highest priority relationships. So I'm going to stick to that. Okay. If you've listened this far, thank you. I really appreciate it. You're one of my early listeners if you're here right now hearing this. So thank you. Thank you for the support. I don't know where any of this is going. I'm just following breadcrumbs and trusting in my own evolution. And if that's helping you do the same, that's what I'm here for. So thank you so much for listening. And I will talk to you next week. Cheers.